Okay, it is 11 o'clock Eastern Time, so we're going to start the webinar. And again, thanks everybody for attending. We will have quite a few attendees today. So the way I've worked this before in terms of questions would be I have my Outlook open, and if you have a question, if you can send it to me, that would be great. And you'll see my email address shortly. But thanks again for attending. And we will not have any of you with the capability of speaking because we just have too many. So if you can submit your questions that way, that'll work out wonderfully. So John, could you go to the next slide? Today we're looking at lean manufacturing in Dynamics AX, by the way, so hopefully you have clicked into the right webinar. And I'm here with John Conwell. John is a senior consultant majoring in the operations side of the business, and also in lean architecture. I'm Michael Hull, and I'm General Manager for eBECS North America. You can see my contact information down there, so you can see the email addresses. If you have questions as we go through this, please send them to me, and what I'll do is I'll feed them through to John at an appropriate time, but we will get to all your questions. The other reason the contact information is there is essentially so that if you have any questions at all, I will come back to everybody at the end, probably over the next couple of days, and what we'll be doing is just checking in with you to see what your interest is in this, and if you'd want to move forward on anything. Our next step would be that we would do a one-to-one discussion with your lean team on exactly what you've deployed in the way of lean thinking, and then should that be a positive conversation and you wanted to move further, we would do a one-to-one demo where we take exactly what you've done in terms of lean transformation and show how we can support the processes that have resulted from that inside of AX. So it would be a much more precise type of demonstration. So that's what we would do. If you have any interest along those lines, you've got my information there, and like I said, I will contact everybody after the demo in the next few days to just to assess any interest you have. Next slide, John. So we'll have a very short AX eBECS overview today. Then we'll go into the lean manufacturing for Dynamics AX and demonstrations. A couple things I just want to bring up to begin with is that a lot of times ERP software has kind of gotten a bad name because it pretends to be more than it actually is. And well, the way we approach it at eBECS is that the lean manufacturing process support in AX follows your lean transformation. So software does not cause transformation. And we have a team of people who are lean thinking individuals who also understand Dynamics AX. So what we bring to the table when we're talking to your lean team is that we're not going to set you back a couple of years as we try to supplant what you've done with MRP thinking. What we do is we only implement software where software really adds value, and we understand how that works. So that's kind of the value that we bring. We not only understand Dynamics AX, but we also understand lean thinking and lean principles. So we know how to work in that environment without trying to make it go backwards. Next slide, John. So today we'll be going through a number of processes, end-to-end production process for a number of things that you can see there. We'll cover material consumption. We'll also be using production flows and activities to show how we can eliminate the need for routing. You can essentially pull directly from a sales order onto the plant floor. We'll discuss using semi-finished activities to eliminate tracking on-hand inventory. And we'll show a number of Kanban strategies, but we'll show Kanban calculation for Kanban components, and then obtaining customer due dates based on self-throughput capacity. Next slide, Jim. The other thing is that today the solution is very robust in terms of supporting lean manufacturing processes, and then eBECS itself has gone on to create a number of lean extensions that go beyond the ability of AX 2012 to support what we think are some very important lean processes. But you can see here that there's probably, I don't know, 20 different rectangles. We're going to show a small portion of those. So as we move to a one-to-one type of demo in the future, if you're interested, we would show you specifically everything that you would need to see to support your system. But so today is, you can only cover so much in 45, 50 minutes. John, next slide. This slide, there's a lot on it. Basically, there's a lot of folks here in our session today that are not using Dynamics AX. So I wanted you to know that AX is a very robust solution. It plays in the Tier 1, Tier 2 upper market as well as in the small market. But we're working on a 47-country implementation right now of AX. So that gives you an idea as to how scalable the thing is. A couple thousand users when we get done with that. And we've actually got 2 of those going right now. One's a dental supply company and the other's a project-based company. But it's a very, very robust solution that plays very well against the typical Tier 1 solutions that you all know about. Next slide, John. The other thing is that Gartner puts out a research company, and they put out a magic quadrant, they call it, for the mid-market every year. And when I first started with Exapta, which was the forerunning name of Microsoft Dynamics AX, it would have been down in the lower left-hand corner. It might not even appear in the on the quadrant, but you can see today that we're really in the ability to execute. We're in the leadership quadrant, and we're also in the visionary quadrant. So the product, Gartner's basically validating Microsoft's strategy in bringing Microsoft Dynamics AX to the enterprise level. Next slide, John. There's actually over 15,000 implementations worldwide, and it's basically a handful of users and thousands of users. That the name Microsoft should bring long-term stability to mind, and this is not a product that's going to get snatched up by a company who's going to put it on the shelf or cease investing in it. Microsoft is looking at this on the long term. Like I mentioned before, it truly is an enterprise product, so with multilingual, multi-currency, multi-company, and it's always had a name to be adaptable, agile, and responsive. Next slide, John. A couple things about eBECS. Essentially, I think the key thing to keep in mind today is that we're about 200 people focused at AX. We're in several different countries around the world, but North America, obviously, and John and I are part of that team. But the key thing to keep in mind is that what we've done that's a little different in the AX world is that we've accumulated a team of people who think lean. And so when they're talking to your lean team, and this will become apparent if you move to the next step of having that one-to-one discussion with your lean team, we know what your objectives are. We understand the world in which you live, and we understand what you're trying to do. And we will not take you backwards by trying to put layer software on in a wasteful way, but we'll implement software where it really does add value. And we're experts at creating a mixed model of traditional manufacturing processes for those items to which that applies, and then lean processes to support items that you're actually producing with lean thinking principles. And then obviously as time goes on, there'll be a transition there, and we can help you with that transition. So that's kind of where we play. Next slide, John. And these are a number of our customers, but you can see that medical devices and automotive. Automotive obviously is it tends to be lean thinking, but medical devices as well. And we've got a number of customers. Really, lean is pretty much been implemented in just about any type of business you can think about. Next slide, John. So I'm going to, at this point, hand it over to John Conwell, and he's going to take us into our lean manufacturing support Dynamics AX. And again, you've got my email address there, so as John goes through, if you have any questions, please send me an email, and I'll make sure I insert that question at the right time. John, I'm going to hand it over to you. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Well, hope everyone's having a good day. Let's talk a little bit about lean. One of the places that a lot of people will ask is, why would I go to lean software to begin with? What advantage is it going to give me? And this is basically a list of some of the advantages, and you'll see quite a few of these as we go through the demo today. Transparency. We really like to have the software, as Mike mentioned earlier, not affect our business in any way, so we want it transparent. and we think AX does a really good job of that. The Kanban calculations, we'll talk about that a little bit today. Allows us the ability to drive from the customer demand integration to the Kanbans and calculating the right number. Kanban portals gives us the ability to communicate with our vendors. If we're using purchase Kanban, the vendors has the visibility to see what's going on. Visibility of critical inventory situations. In many companies where they're using Lane, they're very visual and they may not have as much visibility into their inventory situations, and that causes some other issues. So we can handle that as well. And one of the things that you'll hear me say quite often is this is a box of tools, and we'll use those tools where we need them, and we don't necessarily need them everywhere. So you know, I'm going to be showing you a bunch of different tools that we can use in your toolbox, and you can pick and choose which ones of those tools might fit and might give you some value. So the next one, pull directly from the source of demand. So you're going to see in a minute we're going to enter a sales order that's going to create a pull. By having the Lane software in the system, you're able to generate KPIs and management reports directly out of the system quickly. Bullwhip management, so we're pulling throughout the entire supply chain, giving visibility all the way down even to our suppliers if we choose to go that route. And kind of back to where we talked about a minute ago, being able to do KPIs out of the system as well. You'll have historical data to analyze and improve your business. Where needed, we can integrate MRP into the sales and operations planning process. And again, MRP is by no means required, but there are places where it may fit. And then resource requirement visibility through drumbeat and tack time gives us the ability to promise orders based on capacity, to see where we're at on capacity. Specifically, we like to focus on our constrained resources. This is an example of where one of our customers created a KPI that was real-time based on the system data that was entered throughout the day. So they always had visibility into where they are. And I know when I visited a Toyota plant in Kentucky, they were able to all day long tell how much overtime they projected. So even Toyota's doing things similar to this. Some of the pains and challenges that many companies run into, and I've seen this firsthand. Your production planner, you've got Kanban, you've got production orders, so you're kind of mixing different methodologies on your floor. Makes it kind of difficult to manage. And AX does a good job of handling the make-to-order and the make-to-stock, make-to-Kanban type situations, putting it together where you can see your capacity, your materials, and the people on the floor have a consistent way of reporting production and scheduling. Your water spider, in a lot of cases, may not have visibility of the material needed at the cell. In cases where companies actually pick materials, that can be quite important. We'll talk through that today. Your shop floor supervisor, the same problem the production planner had with different replenishment strategies. It's difficult sometimes to know what your capacity constraints are. So we'll show you some visibility into how we can help you with that. Machine operators, I've got Kanban here, I've got production order on another part. I'm having to report things differently. What we're going to show you today is a consistent interface that'll work the same for make to order versus make to Kanban, and give the operators a consistent way of reporting production and knowing what to do. Again, this is the list of a lot of the different things that are available within AX regarding Lane functionality. We won't cover all of that today. If you see some things you like today, we can circle around and show you some of these other pieces that might fit for your business. Again, we only want to implement the pieces that are really going to help you add value to your business and help streamline your processes. So the 5 Lean principles that most people that are around Lean would know about: the customer value, identify the value stream, introducing flow, pull, and perfection. Those are real critical, and Microsoft in the design of Lean in 2012 really tried to put those into the design of the product. We've talked about a couple times today that we can handle different types of production. So we can handle traditional make-to-order production and Kanban together, and that's the goal of this slide, really to show you that we can handle MRP or Kanban or both together, forecast, sales orders, schedule call-off if customers are ordering releases, and customer Kanban. So we can also order, standard production orders, Kanban, all together, purchase order, Kanban, all together in one model. This slide really shows you a key piece of the lean module within AX. There's two types of Kanbans that typically you would have: a production Kanban where you make something, or a withdrawal Kanban where you're going to basically move material. AX supports that quite well, and in this chart this kind of shows you some of the different strategies that you can set AX up on a part-by-part or a group-of-part basis. So if you have a part that's more of a make-to-stock, you can use the fixed quantity Kanban. As you start moving over to the right-hand side of this scale, you'll see where you start getting into things called scheduled Kanbans, sales events, Kanban line events. And what you're going to see today, we're going to talk about fixed quantity Kanbans, where it's really a traditional 2-bin or card type system that you would have on potentially on your floor today. So that would be that strategy, kind of the make to stock strategy. And then we're also going to kind of work over to our right where you see sales event, and you also see Kanban line event. And those are going to be used more in a make to order type environment. And what's going to happen there is we're going to enter a sales order that's going to drive us to make something. It's going to create a pull on the final assembly cell, and then any components that are needed below that are going to use what's called a Kanban line event to tell them to create pull for those component parts. So we'll cover those different replenishment strategies, those two different types today. This is an example of a lean manufacturing model that we implemented in one of our customers, and basically the gist of this slide is to show you those different strategies that I just talked about. In a make to stock, basically we're going to ship from stock and dispatch straight out of the warehouse. Kanbans can control some of those make to stock parts. We can use Kanban calculations to calculate what the number of Kanbans should be. In more of a make to order scenario, we can go through what's called a CTP check, which is a capable to promise situations. We can look at our drumbeat or our throughput rates on our constrained resources. The system can do that automatically, also looking at materials. And then it can create pull on the final assembly cell, which can in turn create pull on component parts that need to be made as well. Those are called Kanban line events. So this is basically showing you how we can use purchase orders, we can use purchase Kanban, we can within the same model we can have fixed Kanban, which is the traditional Kanban, and then a make-to-order Kanban situation as well, all in one model. So for our demo, we're going to talk about the different strategies, the fixed Kanban, make-to-order, Kanban boards, Kanban transfers, and production flows. We've created a simple bill of material for the demo today. We start with a top-level item that's called D-MTO-FG, and that is just a representation of a make-to-order finished good. That finished good contains two different components. One of those components is a make-to-order component, D-MTO-COMP. That component is going to be driven to manufacture it by what's called a Kanban line event, and you'll see the importance of that in a minute. Underneath that item, it has one single part, a pull to order raw material, and basically what that means is we're going to create a pull every time we make the make to order component. We're going to create a pull in the system that tells us we need to pull that pull to order raw material, and we can create a signal to do that. Again, these are all tools, so we only use the ones that make sense. The next item is the make to stock component, which is going to be controlled by what's called fixed Kanban. That would be a traditional Kanban controlled item. So that would be something that we would control based on inventory, either inventory on hand or by emptying the Kanban. So we'll talk about the fixed Kanban process, where we can basically empty the Kanban and it'll tell us to replenish it. And then that item is made of a simple backflushed purchase part, and that part, just in my example, is controlled by a purchase order, but we won't get into the purchasing process today. So the fixed Kanban process really it really simplifies the process of creating a pull, consuming material, and in many companies that I go into, they have a process today where they're still using a production order and they're using a Kanban card on the floor. And the benefit of this process is that when they empty the Kanban, it automatically creates a signal that shows up on what's called the Kanban board for process jobs, which tells production to make another, or it can show up on the schedule board, have the scheduler plan it, and then it'll show up on the process board. So the process really streamlines what's going on. So the first step, the Kanbans are actually created, and then the Kanbans are scheduled manually or automatically. We'll kind of talk through what that means here in a minute. Then production can produce. They'll actually see it on the Kanban board at that time, and they can produce it. It could consume the material, and then that inventory basically is in stock ready to use. Then when we use that inventory, we can scan the Kanban empty using a barcode scanner, and it'll basically start that process all over again. I haven't had to create a production order. I haven't had to do anything within the system from a planning standpoint, unless I want to manually plan it, and I can automatically plan it as well. So let's pop over into AX and kind of talk about how this works. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to go look at my released products in AX. Those are the part numbers that I'm using for this example today. And here's my top-level finished good. A moment ago, we looked at a graphic of what the bill of material would look like. I'm just going to show you what that bill of material looks like in AX. So this is the same bill of material that I showed you a moment ago. So this component is the one that we're talking about handling with what's called a fixed Kanban. And the first step would be we've got to start somewhere in the cycle because it kind of goes continuous. So I'm going to pop over to the production control area in AX, and I'm going to go to what's called a Kanban schedule board. Now the Kanban schedule board is giving you the ability to see on a daily bucket or weekly bucket, whichever works for you, basically the capacity of that cell within whatever that bucket is defined. So in this case, for this particular day, we already have 120 pieces scheduled out of 200. So what I'm going to do, this particular item is our item that we need to build. So I can manually drag those into the day that I want to schedule it. Notice that it's consuming capacity of that day as I schedule it. This is very similar to a Hijuncle board, a traditional lean tool. If I wanted to, I could have set this up to where that automatically occurred. That when I empty the Kanban, it automatically shows up on the schedule with the first available day. So in a non-constrained resource, I might prefer to do that because I don't really get any value. In a resource that's constrained, where I'm making items to Kanban, there's some indicators down here that show whether or not this item is really needed. And if you noticed a minute ago, that item was showing up as red, so that's saying that I really need to schedule that item. So in a constrained resource, when I have make-to-stock type Kanbans on a constrained resource, I can go in and see which ones are under a kind of a warning level. I can set this on an item-by-item basis. The ones that are red, I need to get those scheduled so I don't run out. I don't have to necessarily schedule both of them, but I want to schedule enough so that I'll be okay. In this case, I have plenty of capacity, so it's not an issue. Once these are scheduled, they'll show up on what's called the Kanban board for process jobs. So we're going to go to the Kanban board for process jobs for that same work cell. So we pull this up on a work cell by work cell basis, and we see that there's my 2 Kanbans that I scheduled along with the other work as well. So we're going to focus on these 2 parts for now. I'm going to select these 2 parts, and you're going to notice that once I select them, it shows me how much available inventory I have. So this Kanban board for process jobs is what I would have in the work cell for the worker. It basically shows the worker what I need to make, whether it's make to order or make to stock, and then it gives them availability of seeing if they have materials or not. It also gives them availability of production instruction, and we'll cover that again here in a few minutes to show you how that works. So this is telling me this is something I need to make. At this point, I can go into the board, I can start it. So I started both of those 2 jobs. It changed the status to in progress, and now I go ahead and finish my work, do my work, and then when I'm finished, I go back and I do complete, and then they'll basically drop off my board because they're completed. So that's basically how the fixed Kanban situation works. And now those Kanbans are complete. If I needed to empty one of them, say I use some of that inventory, I can actually set a scan mode to empty to where I could have a barcoded printout of the Kanban, which would look something like this. And they could actually scan that barcoded Kanban, which would empty it and would trigger that process to automatically occur again. So it would show up on the schedule board and then ultimately show up on the process board. That would happen all together automatically. So you keep all the production control, all those things that I see happen in so many companies away. Now SSRS takes a moment the first time you run it. Subsequent runs will be much quicker. So that's basically how that process works. We fix Kanbans created. Kanbans are scheduled either manually or automatically, depending on how you set it up. You produce the Kanban on the process board, and then once you use that inventory, you can scan and empty, and it'll tell you to use that inventory up. So the other thing that we kind of talked about was the level loading on the Kanban schedule board. So we kind of went through some examples where it showed the capacity per day, and then we're able to load that. The Kanban board for process jobs was the board that we used to actually report production. We're able to see production instructions, which I'll cover here in a minute. We're able to see materials. We actually have some other information we can see over here as well. So that pretty much covers the fixed Kanban process. And we're going to kind of come back and talk about that here in a minute in the context of the make-to-order process to kind of show you how that fits together. So in the make-to-order process, we can set it up in such a way that when a sales order line is entered, we can automatically, or we can come back and manually create a pull on the final assembly cell to say you need to make something to support this particular order line, and then if there's make-to-order components from that, we can show those as well. When we do that, we're able to see from the sales order line a display called the pegging tree, which shows us the whole tree of what we're making. I'll show you that in a minute. We're going to trigger the transfer of material on the line side for any materials that need to be specifically pulled for this job. Now, then we'll prepare, start the Kanban on the Kanban board for process jobs, and then we'll actually produce it, which we complete it, and then we would be able to ship the sales order from there. So this is what the pegging tree is going to look like. I'm going to pop back into AX, and I'm going to actually enter a sales order from the make-to-order top-level part that we talked about first thing. So that's my make to order finished good, and I have it set up where it automatically pulled in the order quantity. So once that order was entered, the system is going back there, and behind the scenes it says, okay, well, you're set up to build the order, so I'm going to go ahead and create the Kanbans. I could set that up to run automatically or manually. I set it up automatically in my example for today. So basically what the system did was it went ahead and generated the top level Kanban for the make to order finished good, and another Kanban for the make to order component, and then another Kanban to actually pull the raw material that's needed for this particular order. Now that would be an optional step. That's one of those tools in the toolbox kind of thing. And then the last thing is this is the issue of the make to stock component that was controlled by the fixed Kanban, which was a process I showed you just a minute ago. So one of the things you notice here was the system created two Kanbans of 10 each. So why did it do that? If we go out, we show you the Kanban rules, and this is really the key piece behind what makes the system do what it does. There's this thing called the Kanban rule. It's set up as an event replenishment strategy, and this is the activity that we use. It's called press and assemble are the activities for this particular one. And then if you notice in the quantities, I've set a maximum quantity of 10. And this would typically equate with the handling size or the daily capacity, depending on how the customer wants to set this up. In this case, I set it up as 10. So when I got an order for 20, it created two Kanbans of 10 and then supported the pulls with a Kanban line event for any make-to-order components, and then another Kanban line event for a part that I needed to pull for this particular order. So basically what we're going to need to do here to kind of process this is you think of, you're going to have to pull the material first, then you're going to make the component, and then you're going to make the top level. So we're going to go through that process. We'll make the component first. We'll pull the component first, and we're going to go to what's called the transfer board. So you'll notice there's three main boards in Lean. The schedule board, where we showed you the scheduling a minute ago, the process board, where we actually produce product and report how many we produced and get to see that on the shop floor. The workers actually use that process board to see what they need to make and when. And then the Kanban board for transfer jobs tells me what I need to move. So again, tools in your toolbox. If you need a signal to tell you materials need to be moved from here to there, this is a really nice tool to do that. It automatically created a transfer that said, I need to move it from this location, warehouse, to this location. So to simply move it, I could actually start it, which would show the status of started, or I could just simply say it's complete, and it'll actually do the move transaction in the system for me. So now what that's going to do for me, if I go back to my pegging tree, and I go, say I'm going to start at the top, kind of go look at the process board for the top level. So on the top level item, if I go out and I look at the process board, I'm trying to make this top level item. I can look at my picking list tab and I can see, oh, well, I have the fixed Kanban control component. That's in inventory, but the make to order component, it's not there yet. So I don't have it available yet, so I'm going to have to go make that. So the worker on the floor, who's actually in the work cell called cut, because this is showing my different work cells, shear and finish, the activity name is cut, and finish. So I can actually click on this particular work cell, and the worker in that work area would be on their process board for their area, for their work cell, which in this case is the shear work cell. And they're going to see, oh, I need to make all these parts, and they're going to be able to click on that part, and they're going to see, oh, well, I pulled that raw material. That raw material is now available, so I could go ahead and start this process, and I can start it, and then if I want to separate the start and the complete, I can. That gives me the ability to track when I started and when I completed a part. Then I'm going to change to the next work cell. So I'm a worker out on the floor. Now I'm at the finish work cell. And I can go and pull up the Kanban board for the finish work cell. And generally this board would be up all the time, and it actually has some options to where it can refresh automatically. So as work dumps onto the board, it'll show up automatically on that particular work cell's board. So I'm a worker out in the work cell, I have this board up, and as work's coming out to me, it's starting to show up on the board automatically, which really can potentially remove a lot of waste in the process. This particular activity is the second activity for the make-to-order component. There's not any materials to pick. I picked them all on the first activity. So I can complete that. Now if I go back to my board, I can see that the two activities for my component, my make-to-order component, are now both completed, and they both have quantities of 10 reported. So now I ought to be able to go up to my top level item, my make-to-order finished good, and then I'm going to go to the first work cell where I'm producing that, and now I should see that I have my material available to be able to manufacture this part. So I'm going to go ahead and select both my Kanbans, and I have enough material to complete them. So I'll actually complete this particular activity, and then I have one other activity on this item. So I've done the press, and now I'm going to do the assembly. So again, these boards would just already be up in the work cell and would refresh automatically as work showed up on them, and they'd be able to see that work where it came up. Another thing that's nice about this, and I promised I'd tell you about production instructions. So in this particular case, I just put a boat as the production instruction. So you could actually have a graphic here that has work instructions of any type that would show up on this process board, so the worker would see what they need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and report production of this item and complete it. And go back to my sales order, go back to my pegging tree, and show you that all the parts now are checked and completed that I need for this particular order. So from a customer service perspective, customer service could go out for a sales order and see specifically where the make-to-order Kanbans for this particular order are. Some companies, that's a real advantage, to be able to see the status of where they are on a particular order and have it all linked together in this methodology. So now that we've finished the top level items, this order would be ready to ship. So we've pretty much completed that process. So we looked at the pegging tree. We went through the transfer process where we actually see that we need to transfer. It's called a transfer job. We went to a transfer board where we actually did the transfer, and then a water spider could actually move the material and actually click complete to say that particular transfer had occurred. We see these transfers used in a number of ways. If we have a company that needs to have Kanban controlled inventory, that they may be pulling the Kanbans from a central location, they can empty the Kanbans, and it can tell us, it can tell the water spider they need to move more material into that location. So it can be a signal for that. We also, the example that I gave here is in the make-to-order scenario where we build a certain part, and every time we build that part, we need to trigger to pull a specific part for that. We can also pick the parts running a traditional pick list type methodology. This is only used where you need a specific signal to go get a part. The Kanban board for transfer jobs is the board that the water spider would look at to see what parts need to be moved. All right, so the next section that we want to talk about, and Mike, were there any questions that we'd want to cover at this point?
I have not received anything, so just
Okay.
keep on going, and I'll kind of jump in if we get something.
All right.
Thanks, John.
No problem. So a key piece in Lean that is quite different than traditional routing is the production flows and activities. Basically what it allows you to do, it replaces a traditional routing. You don't have to maintain a separate routing per item, which is really unique in some systems. AX can have a routing, a group routing, but production flows give you the ability to basically model everything that happens within a particular production flow for all items, and then when you define the Kanban rule, you're able to pick the specific activities that apply to that item or that group of items. It uses a ratio that can be set up for item costing and capacity consumption. Basically what that means is if I've got one part that's kind of my average part, then I would have a ratio of 1 on that. If I had a part that was twice as hard as that part, then I could set a ratio of 2 on that. So it would cost it more, and it would also consume more out of the scheduled capacity. So if I had a capacity of 100 a day and I had an item with a ratio of 2, I could only build 50 of those in a day because they're going to consume twice the normal capacity. I can add a new revision to the production flow that changes with effective dates. So if I have a situation where I have a Kaizen and I've really changed what's going on my shop floor, traditionally when you're using routings, you could have just hundreds of routings that you have to go change. This methodology gives you a way to go in, make a couple simple changes, and then a process to apply those changes to all items that run through that flow instead of having to go out and maintain a bunch of routings. Now, the initial setup, it takes a little bit of work to think through how those production flows are going to be set up, but the benefit is the long-term maintenance of routings goes away. And then, as we mentioned, we select the appropriate route when creating a Kanban rule. So within AX, this is the production flow screen and the production flow activities. And we can just pop out there and look at that briefly. So production flows, and we have a main flow, and these are the activities that are within that main flow. And then we can assign activity times, how long that particular process should take, and then what resource it goes against. So again, kind of in summary, the benefit of the production flows is that you create a flow for every possible way of parts could go through a cell, through a value stream. And then one of the big things that we can do once we have that is we can calculate attack time, and we can do that where we saw earlier that KPI. Are we on tact? Are we gonna be able to make all the parts that we have scheduled today? Do you need to speed up or slow down? So it really gives us some nice functionality there. One other thing that I want to just briefly touch on, when we entered that sales order earlier, we really did the same processes that we could use if we were using what's called CTP. So I enter my sales order, and I can go through a CTP process. Again, that's capable to promise. And what that's going to do is that's going to look at material and capacity and tell us, what date we could potentially ship this to the customer based on material and capacity constraints. So that's a pretty nice tool, very important in some organizations. The system then automatically schedules a Kanban, which would show them on the process board to be produced, and then we can start the Kanban just like we did earlier, produce the Kanbans and ship the sales order. So really there's nothing different in this process than what we did earlier. The system just would have gone out and created a date that we could have shipped the sales order. One other functionality that we'll just briefly touch on is the Kanban calculation. The Kanban calculation is capable of going out and setting the number of bins that you need for a particular item based on a couple of things. It can be based on historical usage of that item. Many companies might go back for 30 days and look at their daily average usage. Some companies want to look forward, more forward-looking. They want to use their forecast to drive what they're going to do moving forward. So they'll put forecasts in the system, and the Kanban calculation will calculate an average daily usage rate, and then it'll suggest the number of Kanbans you should have to support that based on the lead time, safety factor, and so forth. And if this is something you're interested in, we'll be glad to get into some more detail with you when we do a demo with you later on. There are quite a few things that eBECS has developed really to enhance AX Lean, and these are called Lean Process Extensions. There were a couple things specifically. A real key one that I see used a lot is Purchase Kanban, and that was not in the standard product, but that's something that eBECS created. Mike, do you want to talk about the extensions some?
Sure. Thanks, John. And thanks for the presentation. Appreciate that as well. eBECS is involved in a great deal of the actual implementations of AX Lean process support functionality. We do that a lot with other partners. So another partner will call us in and ask for help with either their prospect, for whom Lean process support is important in their decision, or after that prospect decides to buy AX and is ready to go with the implementation, they'll bring us in. And then also partners have customers where the customer has deployed some lean thinking, they've done some transformation, and now their processes are changing, and they want to see if they can support those inside of AX. So we work very closely with other partners. And because of that, between those customers and our own internal customers, where people are coming to us and buying the Dynamics AX ERP solution, we're constantly seeing in the real world of lean manufacturing what the needs are. And so there are some things that AX does not do. And so what we have here is, and a key one is like John said, purchase Kanbans. Just about everybody needs those. So what we've done is to respond to the market and basically had the market pull us to these different solutions. A great deal of these have been developed. Some of them are on the drawing board, and so you see a description for it there, but we haven't quite developed it yet. We're waiting for somebody who actually wants to go there. So John, could you go to the next slide? But vendor managed inventory is a big one, intercompany is a big one, and then we have a number of Kanban enhancements here where we've just come across customers where there needs to be another kind of strategy to make the whole thing work that's just not inside of AX. We work fairly closely with Microsoft to make sure we're not creating software that's just going to be supplanted by something Microsoft's going to develop real soon. I mean, kind of be a waste of time on our part, wouldn't it, for us to develop it, and next week Microsoft comes out with the solution. So all these things we've checked through, made sure, and we're putting work into it, and our customers are basically acquiring these from us. Next slide, John. The last item on the bottom there is lean accounting, which is it's a very hot topic, but we have, I believe, one customer so far that's wanted to go in that direction. So we're equipped and ready to go there. We can see daylight to getting there, and we can roll up everything inside of a value stream into box scores essentially. But we just haven't had anybody take us want us to take them there yet. So so when we say we're lean thought leaders in the Dynamics AX world, it's just not a marketing kind of thing. We really do have people like John, Charlotte, Darren, and others who are very steeped in lean thinking. It's kind of their backgrounds, it's the way they think. So when they come into an AX deployment, they're bringing that in with the ERP solution, and so therefore we're never taking our customers backwards in terms of dragging them back into MRP kind of thinking. We're not inserting software it doesn't belong. We're respecting a visual environment that's taken maybe 3 years to get there. And we really do bring a lot of value along those lines. eBECS, in addition to obviously our AX expertise. So these are things that we've developed or extensions that we are planning on developing as soon as somebody pulls us in that direction. Next slide, John. And I just wanted to check my email one more time. I don't see anybody having sent me an email to ask a question. But so essentially, just not to repeat it too much, eBECS can help with the next step. John, if you can go to the next slide. We'll follow up with everybody. And if you have an interest, and this is something that you want to pursue, the next step that we do is a conference call, pretty much a discovery exercise with your lean team. So we want the people who are leading the charge there. And essentially what we want to find out is, what kind of transformation have you already undergone, and have you created processes that are kind of challenging or just unsupportable currently in the AX system as you have it. And then what we would do would be to come back and do a one-to-one demonstration of just those issues. And of course, if you are using another ERP solution and maybe looking to go to an ERP solution that will support your lean journey, we do a very similar exercise in the sense that our perspective is that if you've invested 3 to 5 years to transform your company, that if the ERP solution doesn't support that, it's really not supporting your business. And so what we're interested in doing is bringing the whole issue of lean manufacturing up to the forefront, because you're really betting the farm on this. And so when we do a conference call with your lean team, almost as a first step in talking with your company, what we're trying to do is to say that this is one of the key salient issues the company has to be able to support with whatever ERP solution they decide to go with. And so that first conference call with the lean team becomes even more important because of those reasons. And then of course we come back and we do a one-to-one demonstration just to show you how that kind of all maps through. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a contact. You've got my cell phone number down there. You've got my email address. And then, like I said, I promise that we'll get back to you all within about a week or so and just assess any interest that you have in this. John, next slide. And we're at 11:52, so we're finishing just a little bit early because usually we have a couple questions. But I guess, John, you must have done such a good job in explaining this at such a great depth that nobody has any questions. So, John, thanks very much. Really appreciate your help today in presenting this. And everyone, thank you for attending and thank you for your interest.